Hello people of the interwebs, this is Luke Moore back with another console anniversary video. And seeing that I covered all of the home consoles in the 6th generation, but wait, you didn't talk about the Zavix port or the Nuon or the V-Smile, you stupid idiot. No. I figure we can end off everything with the last thing we need to cover. The Game Boy player for the Nintendo GameCube. So yeah, this is a successor to the Super Game Boy and I think the last console add-on, if I'm right. Correct me if I'm wrong. And if you can tell, yes, mine is indigo because this is a Japanese version because the US only got the black one, but Japan got all the colors of the GameCube, including that orange spice one, which just looks nice. Now, I'm not going to cover like the history of the Game Boy family and show off my collection. I'm just focusing on the unit itself. If I ever do a retrospective of the Game Boy family, I'll show off my games and the features of the consoles. But yeah, without further ado, let's take a look at the thing itself. Okay, so here we got the Game Boy player itself, and it's essentially just a Game Boy Advance without the screen and buttons. So it could play Game Boy games, Game Boy Color games, both the black and clear cartridges, and Game Boy Advance games. And some select GBA games do have Game Boy player enhancements, but I'll talk about that later. The only thing you can't play on this thing is the Game Boy Advance video cartridges because Nintendo thought people would pirate it through the VCR or something. But I don't have any of those cartridges, so I don't care. But yeah, as you can see, it's a very simplistic design. I mean, it's just something to sit underneath the GameCube. On the top, you got the port that connects to it, and then you got indents for the rubber feet to go in, and then you got these bumps to where the screw holes go in. And you got the Nintendo logo. On the front is where basically everything is. You got the Game Boy player logo here, you got the link cable with the two clips on the side, and the cartridge slot. And one thing I didn't notice about the Game Boy Advance until like a few years ago is that right around here there's a little switch, and when you push it down it switches it into Game Boy Color mode. So that's really nice. The only other thing on here is on the side, the eject button, because when you put a GBA game in, it sits flush, and trying to pull it out is a real hassle. So thanks to the eject switch, you can shoot the game out. I really love the pressure of that. So yeah, that's basically it. Now when it comes to controlling the games, you have a few options. So the first option is of course using the GameCube controller. But because it has no select button, that is mapped to the Y and X buttons. Now, remember when I said about Game Boy Player Enhanced games? Well, it's not like the Super Game Boy where it has custom color palettes and borders. It's basically games like Mario & Luigi's Superstar Saga and Super Mario Advance 4. If you're playing with a GameCube controller, it utilizes the rumble feature, so when stuff happens, the controller will shake, which is pretty nice. Another option is the actual Game Boy Advance with a link cable to the GameCube, so you can have like the most genuine experience. But what I like to use is the Hori GameCube gamepad, which I don't have because it was only released in Japan and it costs about $200 now. So I do have this third-party clone by Old School. Just ignore the logo, just pretend that it says GameCube and Hori right here. But yeah, this controller is actually really nice, especially for a third-party controller. As you can see, it basically feels like a Super Nintendo controller, except it has these little grips on the bottom. So that's nice. So you got all of it, the D-pad, you got select, start, BA, X, Y, and L and R, and then the Z button is right here. So yeah, that's nice. And this is not exclusive for the Game Boy player. You can use this for GameCube games that don't need the analog stick or C-stick, so like Smash Brothers and the Resident Evil games. And like most third-party controllers today, the wire is so freaking long. It's like 10 feet long, which is kind of ridiculous for me. And unlike most third-party controllers, the plug actually matches the color of the controller, which is really nice. So, now with all that being said, let's see how you hook this thing up. Okay, so first things first, you flip your GameCube around and take off the high-speed port, so you just get rid of it. Then take the Game Boy player and then connect it to it. There, and then you got these flathead screws, which you can use to screw it in place. Like so. And now it's not coming off. So you flip it back around, and it actually makes the GameCube into an actual even cube. And then you plug in the controller, and you're still not ready. It will not work like this. Unlike something like the Sega CD where it tells the console to boot from it, it's not like that. You need to pop in the startup disc. And nowadays these things are really expensive and kind of hard to find. But luckily there's a mod to where you can take like an action replay disc, memory card with an SD card slot, and download some custom software so it can load to that. But unfortunately I'm a purist, so I want the way that Nintendo wanted me to play it. But yeah, I really do like these cases. This is what GameCube games came in Japan. It's got this sleeve here. It's got a clear case, a spot for the manual, and they're very tiny. So it's nice that we got a glimpse to what they got. So anyways, you just pop it in, and now you're ready to play. So let's go over to the TV and see this thing in action. Okay, so let's turn the system on. And you gotta go through the GameCube startup every time. And here's the system in Game Boy Color mode. And when you're playing an original Game Boy game or a Game Boy Color game, you can change the aspect ratio with L and R, which I don't know why you would want to do that. But yeah, let's now turn it to Game Boy Advance mode. So yeah, that's lovely. And so as you can see, it has a nice Game Boy Advance border, much like the Super Game Boy with the Game Boy border. And you can press Z to go into options. There's only a few. So the first one is frame, which is just changing the frame like to this one. It's really nice. This Tetris looking one. Or just nothing. And then there's the screen size, which you can make the screen bigger. But I just like this. And then the controller setup, it can switch L and R and X and Y. So if you don't like playing fighting games with shoulder buttons, this is a good option to have. And then you got the screen filter, which is basically like pixel perfect to normal to like soft. But I can't really tell the difference. I think this only is effective with old CRT TVs and not new LCD ones like this one. But I just keep it on sharp. And then you got a timer, which is exactly that. So if your mom or dad only lets you play for 5 more minutes, then you can just set this. And then there's the change game packs. You can actually switch them out without turning off the console. But yeah, that's basically it for the Game Boy player. Overall, I really like this thing. It's kind of disappointing that the Wii U didn't have anything like this for the DS and 3DS, but they have the virtual console, so stuff like this is not really useful nowadays. But yeah, I really do like this thing. Makes the GameCube a lot better. And yeah, that's basically going to be it for this video. Happy 20th anniversary to the Game Boy player. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you like what you saw, check out my Instagram. I post a little bit more frequently over there. And I'll see you in the next video whenever I make it. So, bye-bye folks.